Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the FriarLounge podcast 2021 edition. I'm joined tonight by Nick Recchia and George Arce. Gentlemen, thanks for joining the show. How's it going?
Going good. Enjoying this start to 2021 with some big Padre news. Let's go.
Let's get into it. How are you doing, George?
Doing great, fellas. Happy New Year to you. Jazzed to get back on the podcast here and talk some Padre baseball, man. Super jazzed about the new acquisitions. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's jump into it. Certainly some exciting news with the signing of Blake Snell and Yu Darvish. Nick, I might start with you tonight, just given the depth of prospects that we unloaded to get some of these guys, and I just would love to get your first your thoughts on some of the guys that we gave up, and then give me a little bit of your thoughts on the trade, and then we'll kick it over to George.
Probably start with the Snell move. It was the first one, broke on a Sunday night. Definitely woke the hot stove out of its slumber, we should say. So obviously it all started probably with the talk centered around young pitcher Luis Patino. Kind of universally lauded as a top 25 prospect across the game. We saw kind of what makes him special in small bursts out of the bullpen last year. It's a dynamic fastball. It's explosive life. Usually it's sitting anywhere from mid to high 90s. There's a wipeout slider. Now, of course, in his age 21 season, there was moments we saw where he didn't know necessarily where that stuff was going sometimes, but that's to be expected for such a young pitcher. You can see that the stuff is there, and you get them into that Rays development system with pitchers and the way that they do things. It's not hard to kind of see why they wanted to get a hold of him. And supposedly, based on the interviews with AJ Preller he's had with the media, that's been a name that's come up with the Rays over the last couple of years. Outside of him, obviously, one major league player, which was Frankie Mejia. And I get it. He's had very inconsistent performances at the major league level for the Padres, but it was only a couple of years ago that he was a top 20 prospect in the game as well, at a pretty key position at catcher. So nice buy low candidate for the Rays. Now, Cole Wilcox never threw in a game for the Padres. He was a third rounder last year for the 2020 draft. And I'll tell you specifically with him, he's got such a starting pitcher profile physically, 6'5", 240. I've shared with you guys previously. Physically, he reminds me of Garrett Cole. He's got the big, broad shoulders, the 6'5" frame, the big ham hock thighs. Like, you could tell that is a power pitcher projection right there. He just exudes it. Now, he does have his own warts, control, the plane on the pitches. At the same time, a pitcher with those kind of physical tools to start off with, and if the entire season had played for college baseball at Georgia, I don't think he lasts out of the top 15 picks. And he probably gets picked pretty closely to Emerson Hancock, who was a first rounder as well from Georgia, who ended up, I believe, going to the Mariners. So, and then finally, Blake Hunt. We went and saw him in spring training last year before everything shut down. And for the three of us, that was one of the guys that kind of was jumping off the backfields a little bit, whether it was the pop times or just even the way he kind of commanded the field. You could definitely see he was a leader out there, commanded respect from his teammates. But really the catch and throw game from a big-bodied catcher that's 6'4", probably 220, was very impressive. And the bat started to come around. And from all reports, during the instructs in the fall, he was one of the bats that really jumped off the page to evaluators for the Padres. So it hurts to lose that, but that's what you're going to give up when you're asking for a 28-year-old front of the line, top of the rotation pitcher with 3 years of team control.
Yeah, well, I'm going to kick it over to George and get his thoughts on Snell coming over. But just real quick before I kick it to you, George, my sense is that this trade works for both. And I think the Rays are a team that, certainly values prospects, and they put a lot of stock in guys that have this, it factor, and I feel like with a lot of the guys they got, that they picked up on that. And I'm excited for the trade. It's obviously Snell coming over, but George, let me kick it over to you and get your thoughts on what Blake Snell does for us, and give me your thoughts on some of the guys that we gave up, and what are your feelings there?
Yeah, guys. For me, it was one of the bigger acquisitions, even more so for me than Darvish. We saw what he did in the playoffs, guys, and if there's a team we got to get over in the playoffs in a big game, it's the LA Dodgers, and he did a good job against their lineup. We all know about the deal with the manager taking him out early in the game, just due to not going through the lineup a couple different times. But at the end of the day, he's a good guy on the bump to have in a big playoff game. Love the grit. I think he'll fit in great with the culture here. We've seen him. He does his like social media thing. He's just a good guy, and I think he'll fit great here in San Diego. In terms of the guys we gave up for him, Luis Patino, the rumor is Tampa, they were in on him. They've been keeping an eye on him for a couple years, so I think they finally got the guy that they wanted. I think he was one of those prospects that I didn't think that he was touchable, but price. And let's be honest, Blake Snell is appealing on many levels, right? He's left-handed. He's got 3+ pitches, and he's got 3 years of control. And then the contract's solid. He's getting between 10, 13 million over the next few years. Actually, might be getting up, I think, a little bit higher than that toward the end, but it's just a great contract for what we need. And I think both parties made out well. And again, Blake Hunt, I think with Campusano in front of him, there's a little bit of a block there. And who's the other gentleman that we traded for him? Was Blake Hunt and Francisco Mejia, right? Yeah. Mejia went back their way. And again, I think he had his opportunities here in San Diego, and it just didn't work out. So hopefully a new scenery for Francisco works out. But at the end of the day, we got our ace, and then Mr. Rockstar Preller tops it off with Yu Darvish the next day, man. Which if Clevenger's going to be, and we don't know Lamet again, we only went 60 games, and Lamet got hurt. What can we expect from Lamet this season? Hopefully a full season, but you got to prepare for the worst. And now we got 2 frontline starters to get us going next year. So super, super excited.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to go back real quick to the trade, Mejia, this is in his third organization in recent years. And to me, like, I think he's got an opportunity to figure it out, but I'm heard rumors that potentially they could look at him as maybe more of a bat in their lineup and less of a catcher. Because I think that's where a lot of his value sits today. Padres spent a lot of time trying to get his catching right. He's got a great arm, but that could also still play in the outfield. And so he's an athletic player, and I think they're smart, and they'll find a place for him in their lineup. And Blake Hunt, I was impressed. So I think this works out for both. I mean, to get 3 years of control with Blake Snell, I think that's everything for San Diego as they look towards what they're trying to accomplish with their window that's open right now. Super excited about it. So I think it works for both clubs. Tampa just is smart. I mean, the fact that in a 60-game season, they got to the World Series and came up short. It's impressive. So, kudos to them. And I'm stoked with it. Preller is really jumping all in to make this happen. Let's go back to Darvish.
One last thing, guys. I'll jump in on this. Let's be honest. Preller's going to just reload the minor leagues once again. The international draft coming up soon. So the great thing about organizations like Tampa, like San Diego, is that they'll be pulling these trades 3 for 1 here and there. Tampa does it all the time. Yet them and the Padres consistently, stay in the top 5, top 10 in minor league depth. So kudos to both organizations to making big moves and bettering their teams and keeping the the minor leagues flowing.
Yeah, and George, going back to you real quick, and I'll jump Nick. I'll jump back to you for some commentary on Darvish in the minor leagues. But what's your initial thoughts on Darvish? And I think the only thing that stands out to me is his age. But I think he's played well recently. But what are your thoughts on him coming to the Padres, his age, and what he means to this club in addition to the adding on to the Snell trade?
With Darvish, I think if you just watch video, it's just he's got almost 4 to 5 plus pitches. I mean, they all dance, they all move, they make the hitters uncomfortable. I think that's where he succeeds, and I think finally he's healthy. And when you have a healthy Darvish and 4 or 5 plus pitches going for you, you're going to see the type of pitcher you saw this year in a short season. So I think that's what we're banking on. I think he's adaptable. I think he'll fit in fine with the team. And yeah, man, I'm super excited. I think we gave up some guys. Yeah, we gave up a lot of guys there. We took out a big contract, but as Nick and I talked earlier, as we chatted, was these guys don't have a lot of experience. The guys we traded, 3 of them haven't played a single major or, professional game. So, Reggie Preciado, an infielder, kind of stuck behind Abrams and Tatis. And, Mana and the other couple kids there. Again, it was a logjam. It was going to be a while till we see them contribute. So love what we got back. And it's, again, just AJ Preller going for it, man. And, they're doing it for the fans and for the city. And so, we got to get ready to face a big team like the Dodgers and go all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, the window's here, man. So what are your thoughts on the Darvish trade and the guys that we gave up to make it happen?
I think the Yu Darvish deal was highway robbery. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a little bit of salary offsetting, and he was a talented player for the Padres, don't get me wrong. But with 1 year of team control for a middle of the rotation kind of guy in Zach Davies, that was more or less offsetting some salary. And out of the 4 prospects going back to the Chicago Cubs, 3 of them have not played a single professional game. That being last year's second rounder, Owen Cassie, outfielder, Canadian, Ishmael Mena, and also Reggie Preciado. So both at this point, 17-year-olds, Ishmael Mena, a very talented outfielder, and Reggie Preciado, a 6'4" switch hitting shortstop. So tremendous talents, yes. With those 3 never playing a single professional game, is there a little bit of volatility? Yes. Incredibly high ceilings and very, very low floors. You just never know. At those ages, they could skyrocket and find themselves in the majors at the most, aggressively 2023. At the most aggressively, more reasonably is probably 2025 or beyond. So you look at the window for the Padres, that just doesn't match up. So we're talking about acquiring a resource that's going to help us win in 21, 22, 23, where these players probably aren't scratching the majors until after that window. So it makes a lot of sense. The one player that did have some professional experience was a shortstop, Yason Santana. He had a really great showing in the Arizona Rookie League in 2019. But, Georgia, as you and Mark have said, when you're a shortstop in the San Diego Padres organization currently in 2021, you got the deck stacked against you a little bit. There's a 22-year-old, by the way, today, happy birthday, Mr. Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yes, sir.
So when you're a 22-year-old, Silver Slugger, best shortstop in the game, and then what's widely regarded as one of the top prospects in baseball and one of the top shortstops in minor league baseball, and C.J. Abrams in front of you as well, your chances of reaching the majors as a shortstop in this organization, if you're not one of those 2, is pretty slim at the moment. So, yes, he was part of a deal, him and Reggie Preciado, and it just shows you what the depth of minor league talent can give you. It's a universal currency in Major League Baseball. Prospect capital allows you to buy anything because every team wants it.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and then your thoughts, just real quick, on what Darvish brings. I'm assuming Darvish, slots in at the top of the rotation. I mean, I guess maybe it doesn't matter quite as much. I mean, my hope is that Lamet's there as well, and we can get into that here in a minute. But just what does a guy like Darvish bring to the top of our rotation?
Yeah, no. All due respect to Mr. Lamet, Yu Darvish is going to throw opening day. I mean, it's the hat tip to the veteran. He's 34. He's pitched in huge games, whether it be internationally, back in the Nippon Baseball League back home in Japan, before he came over to the States, or in a lot of playoff games. He's pitched in World Series games. You take him and you look statistically at his numbers the last 1.5 years, and they are just eye-popping. He's going to throw game 1, and it really sets up the rotation to have the righty, lefty, righty in your top 3. Blake Snell should pitch second, and then Lamet, which might be the absolute most unfair number 3 starter in Major League Baseball. Dinelson Lamet riding in the 3 spot. So that would not be a fun series for any team looking to come to San Diego next year. And the 3 pitchers you got to face are Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, and Dinelson Lamet in the rubber game. So yeah, not a fun series for a lot of teams out there. But Yu Darvish's stuff, George mentioned probably 5 at any given time plus pitches. He's got a total repertoire of about 11 pitches that he throws. He throws 5 to 7 of them pretty consistently, though, in games. Now, one big thing that you notice that changed between basically the halfway mark of 2019 is he started using his 4-seam fastball less, and he started using his cutter more. And 2 things have kind of transpired as a result. One, he's actually seen quite an uptick in velocity. So his average fastball now is sitting over 96. He's topping out at about 98 as a 34-year-old, which is pretty good gas right there for anybody. But also, you're looking at his control has never been better. Over the last 2 years, he's got a streak over the last, I think it's 25 games, where he's got over 200 strikeouts and about 25 walks. It's outstanding numbers. Like I said, they just jump off the page at you. So part of the acquisition was also his personal catcher in Chicago, which was another part of the deal in Victor Caratini. So there's a comfort, there's a rapport already there. And then when you talk about, trading Frankie Mejia and trading Blake Hunt, well, guess what? With Ostanola and Victor Caratini with, I believe, 3 years of team control, Ostanola with 5 more years of team control, and you still have Luis Camposano waiting in the wings of AAA. Once again, you're going to deal from depth, and that was one of those trades. So, but Yu Darvish, he just sets the table for the team, and it kicks everybody down one spot in the rotation, and it makes the depth all that better. And one thing I think that's gone underappreciated with these 2 trades is going into the 2021 season, knock on wood that Dinelson Lamet's healthy, and he's the pitcher that he showed he was last year. But also, this takes a tremendous amount of pressure off of the other young pitchers that are going to be on the staff. Mm-hmm. Most notably, Chris Paddock, who now probably has the expectation of going in as the number 4 starting pitcher, number 5, depending on if they bring in another veteran on a 1-year deal. And then also the young lefties, the triumvirate of young lefties that are waiting in the wings as well, whether it's who we saw in little sneak peeks of last year, and Adrian Marjon in a bigger job this year possibly. We saw a little debut of Ryan Weathers throwing gas in the playoffs. Oh, and by the way, the number 1 pitching prospect still in Major League Baseball, which is Mackenzie Gore. And those 3 might be fighting for the number 5 spot in the rotation this year. So it gives them a lot less pressure that they don't have to give tremendous workloads next year. Because we know, for one thing, not a single pitcher in Major League Baseball last year threw more than 80 innings last year.
Yeah. Well, Nick, you mentioned those young guys, and I do think Morejon should at least get a shot. I'm not sold yet that he's a starter, but because of the amount of innings and because of his injury history. But it feels like he's been being groomed to go 5. And we're talking about Gore. Whether he gets the starts or not, he's still going to be, his innings will be limited because he's a rookie, and Weathers will probably start in the minors but get some opportunities. But I think it's also worth noting, like, the Padres still could bring in a veteran, and then they also have a guy out there named Joey Lucchesi, which, I don't think we know yet where he sits. We saw him pitch some last year, and he certainly has challenges in going more than 3 innings at this point. But did he add another pitch this offseason? What has he been working on that maybe he adds some value to the organization? In 2019, he 10-game winner and probably our best pitcher in the rotation. And can he get back to that? I think that's a question mark that, at that point with the, at the back end of the rotation, you just need innings. You need innings, and you need someone to give you just some solid outings. This offense is way better than that 19 version. And to me, I think that's an interesting point. Nick, you got something?
Yeah, the one thing I can guarantee you for the 2021 season, it's not going to take only 5 starters. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. Just no starting, especially if it's a 162-game season. No starting pitcher in Major League Baseball was conditioned through their performance last year to get them to 200 innings this year. It's going to be a hard road, hard road ahead if that's the case. You're going to have a stable of arms and support, and it's probably going to take 7, 8 starters this year to really get you through the season in terms of workload that's going to be needed. So a guy like Joey Lucchesi could be incredibly important before the end of the 2021 season. I mean, I still think I think the heavy lifting is done for the starting rotation.
Yeah.
But I think a veteran on a 1-year deal, whether that be a Cole Hamels or a Corey Kluber or somebody of that ilk, I think somebody like that to fill and really push the young kids in the back of the rotation and to give them some competition with it, I think is probably something we're going to see closer to spring training.
Yeah, George, let me jump in here, man. Let me get your thoughts on how's this rotation going to shape out outside of the top 2, and where do you see this landing?
Yeah, well, yeah, again, the top 3 are locked and loaded with Lamet, Snell, and Darvish. I think it's going to be a big year for Paddock. He was starting to toy around with that third pitch and the curveball. And after a few uncomfortable starts, he kind of abandoned it and became a 2-pitch pitcher that a lot of the good hitters in the league were starting to sit on pitches. And, he got rattled a little bit, call it your sophomore jinx. But at the end of the day, I think the pressure's off him being the sheriff, pressure off of being, the frontline guy. And at the end of the day, he can learn from those veterans. So I think it'll be a big step up year for Paddock, especially, going up against teams with their 4th guy on the rotation. So I think that'll be good. In terms of the 5th spot, yeah, I think currently McKenzie's finally going to get his opportunity. I loved what I saw in Ryan Weathers, but I don't think he's ready just yet. And we've talked about this. I love Morejon. I think he's dynamic. I love guys that can give up a 500-foot bomb and just ask for the pill back on the mound and throw the next pitch without worrying about what just happened. I love his mound demeanor. And the great thing with him, and Mark, we've talked about this, he serves that Dodger-like Urias role. He can give you a good start. He can close out a game. He can come give you a hell of a matchup. So I love me some Morejon. And the fact that we kept him throughout these trades, I swore that he was on a package going back to the Cubs based on everything we were reading over the month. So awesome job to keep that guy. In terms of acquisitions, we've talked about this, guys, is do we go after a low-cost veteran? Do we do another trade? Or do we let the kids go, And like Nick said a little bit earlier, it's not going to take just 5 starters. It's baseball. Injuries are going to happen, right? It's COVID still. So at the end of the day, I think we got to load up with some pitching. And, the veterans that we've talked about, that are on the heap, again, are your Hamels. There's that local connection. Coming full circle back to San Diego, bringing a championship back. I think he was about 15, 16 when the Pods went to the 98 World Series. So there's got to be a love there for him to come back home. Again, Corey Kluber's trying out for some teams here pretty soon, to showcase what he's got. And then there's Chris Archer, who's got that Tampa Bay connection and that old Padre connection we were looking at. On a trade standpoint, this is something that we talked about and put out some tweets. I love me some Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo on an arbitration year is going to get about $6 to $8 million, something we'd probably pay one of our, one of these veteran guys. And you go back to the 3 years of control, which is kind of the Padres window to go take it. And it's a guy that Preller had traded 4 years back with the Marlins, but it got rescinded due to an injury to Colin Reyes. So again, we know how Preller is about going after guys that he's kept his eye on. And man, you put him in that rotation. And again, taking a look at Lamet and what's happening with the elbow there, I think Luis Castillo would be an amazing acquisition. And the guys going back would be guys that have been showcased and guys that can show it. And Luis Camposano, Ryan Weathers, Baez package, but, the chips are there. So, we'll see if Preller's done with filling up the rotation, guys.
Well, it's funny, George. Thanks for that. Pretty much all the guys we've mentioned have connections to the Padres. We're talking about Kluber's been mentioned. They were looking at him last year before he went to the Rangers. Hamels, I heard that rumor twice prior to him. Since Preller's been here, he's been rumored to be coming to San Diego. So certainly the Padres have checked in on him, and there's been some interest. And Castillo would be a great find. I mean, it matches up to what we're trying to accomplish in that the window, right, till 2023. Does Pro have it in him? I don't know. It would be, I mean, that would be pretty amazing. But my concern would be you probably end up having to get rid of a guy like Baez and Campusano and maybe Weathers just to make that deal happen. And that just seems like we've emptied the cupboard quite a bit here, but we've still maintained a lot of these guys. So how much, and we're not going to be getting top 5, top 10 anymore. We're kind of the back end, but we're still going to get plenty of talent. I have a lot of faith in this organization to bring in strong talent and also do it through the international signings. But
you guys. Really quick, what do you guys think about the reality of signing one of the top free agents still in Sagano or the good old Trevor Bauer guy? He's pretty active. A lot of teams looking into Trevor Bauer. Do you guys think there's an opportunity, despite the big moves we made, to go after one of those two guys?
Nick, you take that one first, man.
No, I'm gonna stick a fork in those. Those are done. So Trevor Bauer, he could play on social media all he wants. He can ask Padre fans why he should come to San Diego. The reality is that the team is not going to fork over $30 million plus a year, which is supposedly the rumored asking price is in the mid 30s and above a season. Whether he's going to get that or not is debatable, but supposedly that's the ask based on different people in the game, John Heyman, stuff like that. The Padres are just, one, I don't think have the wherewithal to do it. Even if they did, I think there's much better ways to spend that kind of money. Possibly like, signing a 22-year-old superstar shortstop to a long-term extension. That things like that would take a lot more priority than bringing in Trevor Bauer, who right now on this staff is your second, your third, your fourth starter.
Well,
I mean, you look at his numbers. Last year, he jumped off the page. He had one season in Cleveland where he jumped off the page as well before he got hurt. And then there's some seasons in between that are pretty inconsistent.
But 12 starts. I mean, yeah, you can win a Cy Young with 12 starts, but I mean, guys, we've been baseball fans our whole lives. We've seen plenty of guys have 12 great starts and then 12 terrible starts or 8 terrible starts in that. So, I'm sure he's a great pitcher, and I feel like he's going to bring value to whoever he signs with. My feeling is he's going to be a Blue Jay. He's going to be an Angel. Angels are star for pitching, and I don't know if that makes sense for him to go to Anaheim, to Los Angeles, given their challenges with just bringing in pitching, other pitching. But that's kind of feel like where he's going to land, just because they need pitching and they're willing to overpay. So. But yeah, George, going back real quick to Lamet, I think that's a big thing. I think we should just spend a little more time on is Lamet's injury. To me, is I heard recently he's getting plasma plate. I'm getting the term wrong, Nicky, maybe, but help me here. He got some
rich plasma injection,
and I think that's something that we've heard before prior to people getting Tommy John is that last stitch effort.
I was just going to speak to it not really quick because unfortunately, I know they, reports say that December 1st he started throwing the ball, but unfortunately we're not going to know until he hops on the hill and just lets it loose, and that's going to be in spring training, man. And like I said, I think we're building the deck with the rotation. We got the kids coming up. We got Paddock again. We've talked about it. And that's where I think there's one more move going to be made, man. But again, this was a short season of 60, and if you're expecting Lamet to come out and be solid for 35 plus the playoffs, we got to be smart with him. And I won't be surprised, even if he's healthy, Lamet will be on a pitch count. He'll be treated just like we're treating Gore, the Morahones, the Weathers, just with, building the arm up and just making sure, So, that's where I think everything lies with Lamet.
Well, and one thing I think it's worth mentioning on Lamet is that, Clevenger had his surgery relatively early. And if you stagger this, potentially, let's say Lamet has to have surgery in February, knock on wood that he doesn't. But if he does, at least you staggered that a bit. So let's say Clevenger is able to come back, start the season next year, and then Lamet comes back, in second half of the season kind of thing where you're, you know what I mean? So you're not, you basically find out about Lamet. Maybe he can stick it out, and maybe he can pitch for us this year, or maybe not. So I think there's, they certainly have, Preller and company have certainly thought about that. So if you guys are okay, maybe we'll shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the bullpen a little bit. Bullpen obviously is in great shape. There's one thing that kind of stands out to me. What stands out is where we are from in their closer situation, and thinking about Yates, Rosenthal, where we stand there. I'd love to get your thoughts. George, I'll start with you. I'd love to get your thoughts and what do you think we're going to end up doing here from a bullpen standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to love about both those closers in Yates and Rosenthal, man. I mean, Yates has the nasty splitter. The surgery he came off wasn't anything to do too much with the elbow. It was more of a little cleanup action. And, he's got that connection here, man. And I think he deserves a chance to be our closer. On the second half for the organization, I think it comes at a great cost because of the injury. Looking at maybe a 5, 8, 10 year with incentives. But it's, it favors the team. And right now we picked up a big contract with Darvish, and, we had a payroll goal about 150, but Sealer, in charge now, it looks like they're willing to stretch that out, getting in the 160, maybe the 170 range just to go win it all, So.
Yeah. Nick, what's your thought, man?
Yeah. I mean, when we're talking about the bullpen right now, it's a gluttony of riches. Right now, I mean, you're looking at a setup group that's going to include Drew Pomeranz, Emilio Pagan, midseason acquisition Austin Adams, who's got dynamite back into the bullpen kind of stuff. The epitome of the ultimate bullpen tease, that's Jose Castillo. He shows you just lightning in a bottle and then just can't stay on the field. So he's one of those guys, like, if he does make it to the bullpen and stays healthy, all of a sudden you have another late inning dynamic option. But the one thing that really would put everything in order and kick Pomeranz to the 8th and Pagan to the 7th and so on would be bringing in one of those gentlemen to be a closer. Now, there's other options out there. There's Liam Hendricks as one. But really, the two that I think Padre fans specifically want to see the team approach and try and bring back is either Kirby Yates or Trevor Rosenthal. As we've discussed, though, internally here, the go-to between the two, to me, I'm a Kirby Yates fan, and when you look statistically between the 2018 and 19 seasons, statistically outside of Josh Hader's performance in Milwaukee, you could argue that Kirby Yates' performance over those 2 seasons were the performance of the best reliever in Major League Baseball outside of Josh Hader. He goes through that. He has the cleanup, I believe, on some bone chips, bone spurs in his elbow. Gets that taken care of. It in a regular 162 game season. He's back before the end of the season. It was only really because of the shortened season that was the reason he wasn't able to get back in time. So you put him as a healthy Kirby back in the back of the bullpen without a long-term commitment as more of a prove-it season for the 2021 year. I think that's ideal for the team. You can give them incentives for performance-based numbers. And then from there, like I said, it sets up everybody and puts them in a chance to be successful. I mean, if you really think about it, if you could have a combination of Jose Castillo and Austin Adams as dynamic middle relief pitchers, that's not fair. Like that is causing some heartburn for pinch hitters and regular hitters throughout the National League right there, when Jose Castillo might be entering a game in the 5th or 6th inning. Yikes.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. So with the struggles that Yates had last year, was that a result because he was dealing with some injuries, dealing with those bone with his elbow? Absolutely. I'm just trying to understand, I mean, to me, that's where my concern comes in. But yeah, I agree with you, Nick. He's lights out, and certainly last year him coming in was, I think everybody was kind of like, well, what's going on with Kirby, and I think a lot of, at least from what I see on Padres Twitter, people lean towards Rosenthal because he was pretty electric. He engages with the fans and there's that element. But I think it's easy to forget what Kirby has done when we were a bad team and how dominant he was. And so to me, that's the cheaper option, right? Is to go with him and Rosenthal. Like, I keep going back to Rosenthal because just I like the guy, but I also am like concerned. I think about the money that the Rockies gave Wade Davis, right? And I'm not saying he's going to get those types of numbers in this kind of season and in the environment that we're in, but you're probably going to have to pay him $10 million a year, right? And George, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth on this. I go back in between, hey, Yates is 5 to 6 million, but coming off a small scope with the splitter, versus the electric stuff that Rosenthal has and the excitement that we just saw in the brown unis and his engagement with the fans. And, so on the other hand, I look at $10 million versus 5, it's a $5 million difference. And if you're all in as an organization, then, what do we talk about? OPM, other people's money, right? So it's not my money. So at the end of the day, you go get the guy that you think is going to close out a big playoff game for you. And again, I know, Tank, you're big on Yates and the splitter. I get it. And then there's the stuff with Rosenthal. So I don't think you can go wrong. And the worst case scenario, guys, if neither happens, is, in my opinion, you got a great guy in Pomerantz who's, I think gave up 1 run all season last year and, can pitch great against lefties and righties. So I think it's a win-win-win for the Pods next year with the closer role.
Yeah, George. I mean, the whole thing is you want to bring in the better pitcher, which is Kirby Yates. So
all right,
you bring in Kirby Yates and his splitter, because I'll tell you the stuff.
I get it.
It's locating 92, 93, and is having that splitter drop off the table. That's a true strikeout pitch. Rosenthal, it's dynamic stuff, and it really is fastball changeup. But if the fastball starts to trend down in terms of velocity, it's a less dynamic kind of package. So give me Kirby Yates. And Kirby has said his preference is to play on the West Coast because his family gets to see him play. And the last thing we want is to see Mr. Kirby go up.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Else. So
don't
let's say Kirby stays in San Diego.
The reality is that the bad guys are going to either get one of those guys or Liam, what is it, Hendricks?
Well, one name I'm going to throw out there, though, and I think you can't forget is Brad Hand. I'm not saying he's coming here, but I feel like maybe he's a little bit cheaper in terms of being able to get him than Rosenthal. So I think he's kind of maybe in the middle there between those two.
His numbers have been trending down though the last 2 seasons, so it's.
No, I agree. It's just it's a lefty, and so it's an interesting name because he's out there. But yeah, Nick, I'm going to go back to a name that you mentioned, Castillo. Very frustrating. I mean, the guy, we've seen him strike out I think in succession 3 Reds, top flight Reds. Was it
Joey Votto, Eugenio Suarez, and Adam Duvall in his All-Star year?
Right, he's dynamic, and if that guy could stay on the field, I mean, he could be our back end closer at some point. Just he's that good, but so to me, he's a huge wild card because our bullpen could go from great to dominant, super dominant, if we can bring in a guy like that and he can pitch consistently and be healthy.
So, Mark, you've said this, and George, we've all had this conversation together. If he doesn't make the rotation, Adrian Morhone. Talk about dynamic lefty coming out of the pen. I remember last year at spring training, and he's thrown against the Angels, and it's Mike Trout. I believe it was Justin Upton. Or no, excuse me. It was Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, and Shohei Ohtani.
Yep.
And he breaks Mike Trout's bat. He breaks.
Twice.
Yeah, he breaks Anthony Rendon's bat, and then he strikes out Shohei. That's the kind, and I get it was spring training, but when you break Mike Trout's bat, you break Anthony Rendon's bat, who were arguably both top 10. Obviously, Mike Trout's probably one of the best players in Major League Baseball. You break their bats, and then you strike out Ohtani in a single inning. You're looking pretty good. I mean, that stuff is just impressive. And in a bullpen, if you condense it down, you go let it fly for 1 inning, 3 batters. Give me the best you got for that. I don't see there's any reason why eventually, if he doesn't make the rotation, you might look at him in the back of the bullpen and give us the best you can for three guys.
Well, and I think it's interesting to think about like some of the trades that have happened and the fact that Morahone's still here. Like, certainly, Morahone, Weathers, and Gore kind of stand out to me, right? Because we've some of the arms that we have traded, thinking about Quantrill and thinking about Patino, right? Lefties are at a premium in the league, and hanging on to those guys make a lot of sense, and they're there for different reasons, and they're at different stages in their career. But yeah, Morahone's super dynamic. Haven't even seen Gore at the major league level yet, and then Weathers, who knows? Where he lands in terms of rotation, or a guy who can give you back end of the bullpen kind of things. But it's exciting to have three dynamic lefties, young guys who are coming. So, Nick, what's up, man?
I will say this, gentlemen. Do not forget, AJ Preller and company spent $22 million to bring in Adrian Morahone in the 2015 International Extravaganza. They spent $22, an $11 million signing bonus, and a matching $11 million penalty to bring him into the fold. That is how much they think about Adrian Morahone.
Good point.
So,
good point.
You're willing to spend that kind of money on an amateur pitcher, on a kid at the time, you're not giving him up lightly. And one of the reasons why his name is still on the roster.
Yeah, he's progressing. I mean, he might have become one of the untouchables, and we don't even know it. You know what I mean? So, and Baez is a guy who's kind of fallen behind a little bit. He's a guy that you think would have taken a step forward, and another guy you've heard in trade talks, but he's still in the Potter organization, and it'll be. What do you think, guys, in terms of where Michel Baez is at in his either progression or regression?
I feel like he's a depth piece at this point, right? He's a, I think they intended for him to be a starter last year, and that didn't happen. And a necessity, he became a guy who was, kind of ended up more towards the bullpen or wasn't going to really start for us. But, to me, I don't really know. I feel like he's a depth piece right now. If somebody goes down, if like a Paddock, pulls the hammy or gets injured, I think he's a guy who could come in and start. That's my feeling. It's just he's an extra layer of depth for us in the starting rotation at this point. But that's just my feeling. Nick, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, spring training, 2020 spring training felt so long ago last year. Early March of 2020 feels like a lifetime ago almost.
Oh my gosh!
But he was one of the guys that when we went back to the house every night, he was one of the guys that we talked about. Because it was, the stuff was back. In 2019, the stuff, the mechanics, when we talked to people, the mechanics were off a little bit. The velocity started to dip. And the word around camp last year during spring training was the stuff was back for Baez. And it was 97. It was 98. It was that electric stuff that he had shown so prominently in the Midwest League when he really just jumped on the prospect map. So if we were robbed of seeing what he could do at the minor league level last year with that kind of stuff. I'd love to see what he does at the AAA level to start off the season if he can maintain that kind of stuff again. And we talk about a guy coming back off injury. Don't forget about a guy named Reggie Lawson. He was another one. He was jumping off the page last year early in camp, and came down with Tommy John. So, but if he's healthy by mid-year this year, talk about another kid with dynamic stuff.
Well, Nick, you mentioned that it's important, I think, to think about, right? Reggie Lawson, there's a Mason Thompson, there's guy like some guys that have had some injury history, right? That are, we're coming off a strange year, right? We didn't have a minor league season. We don't have this development history to talk about and how they guys progressed. We have like this kind of mystery and shadow of like what happened at the alternate site, right? We have very little information that came from there. And Mason Thompson's a guy. I mean, I've even heard, a lot of buzz about Jacob Nix, and we can certainly tell a lot of different stories about Jacob Nix and some of the things we've heard, but there's some buzz about him and him potentially being able to make some noise. And I'm even interested to see, like, just some of the guys are injured. Espinoza, where do these guys sit? Espinoza hasn't really thrown a lot, outside of, was it 2016? But 2016. So, but at the same time, I think there's value in thinking about how quickly are the Padres going to progress him, being that he is on the 40-man roster, and you can't keep a guy like that down for too long. If he's throwing high 90s, he may end of the season or may get some just innings, kind of like very Patino-esque, right? Where he gets some innings here or there where he can fill in for an injury or just come up and get some innings just to see where he sits. But any additional thoughts, guys, here as we wrap up thinking about the pitching and before we move on to bench guys?
Well, when we're talking about Anderson and Espinoza, I think the transition to the bullpen probably starts immediately. When you've been off that long, it's about maximizing the return with that stuff. From all reports at Instructs, he was showing some of that same dynamic stuff. It was mid to high 90s. He was flipping a curveball still at a plus rate. Can he stay healthy? So you put him in a bullpen and short bursts, hopefully you can keep him healthier. Man, it's amazing what you can see nowadays on social media when a pitcher is throwing out some videos with a Rapsodo machine behind them, and you're able to get velocity, spin rate, things like that. Wow. So yeah, Mason Thompson, he impressed front office officials so much. You got to keep in mind, this kid has never thrown above high A ball, and that was in limited duty even for the Storm. And he got added to the 40-man roster this offseason to protect against the Rule 5 draft. I mean, I've seen videos where he's throwing that nasty slider in the high 80s, and he's snapping off fastballs 97, 99. That stuff plays in a bullpen. My goodness. Reggie Lawson's just, once again, the ideal pitching frame. 6'4", 230, can hit, sit more or less mid-90s. And he's one of the kids, he's thrown in the most Don Welke Classics. He's thrown in 3 of them.
Wow.
So an impressive kid. And from the same draft class, Mason Thompson and Reggie Lawson. Reggie Lawson, I believe, was $1 million bonus baby. Mason Thompson was bought out of a scholarship, I believe, to Texas with a $1.75 million bonus. So 6'7", 235. It's a big kid right there. So, no surprises. There's a lot of power coming. But those are just a handful of those power arms that are still in the system. So everybody likes to say, we went all in. Like, the reality is we didn't go all in. We still have all of our premium prospects. If you take Patino out of it, you still have the number 1 pitching prospect in the game in Mackenzie Gore. You still might have what might be the number 1 shortstop prospect in the game in, CJ Abrams, possibly one of the top catching prospects of the game, Luis Camposano, and a bevy of power arms like the kids we just mentioned. So The farm is not barren by any means, gentlemen.
Yeah, and it's exciting. And, the reality is Preller is building this team because we're going to, the Dodgers are a barometer for how good we are, and they're the team to beat. And I think he's stacking this team with a lot of talent in order to overcome that. And I think once you do that, certainly there could be a different team that's fighting for the championship this year, but they're the team to beat in the NL West, and we're looking up at them, and that's what we got to do. We got to win the NL West, and I think we've got the talent to do it. And let's stay healthy and go make 2021 a great year. Moving on to the bench. This is an interesting conversation, I think, as it's still kind of open, right? Where we're going to land from a bench standpoint. Padres signed O'Grady, I believe his name is.
Yep.
And Profar is a guy that was an important part of our bench last year, at least for half of the season. Struggled for the first part of the year, but I think, there's a belief from Preller and Tingler that, he's a valuable piece. And I think latest I heard was the Royals were interested in him. And, I think it's a decision he has to make. Am I going to play every day with the Royals? Am I going to have an opportunity to play every day? Or am I going to be on a competitor? And maybe my feeling is he'll play every day, but is it going to mean, does he get 1 at bat or does he get 3 at bats? and I think he's a valuable piece. I'd like to see him return. But we have guys like Mateo, and it's a little bit less jazzy without Profar there. But I'd love to give your thoughts on the guys that we have, fellas, and maybe where this will ultimately shake out. As we look to the next season. George, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so the bench, right now with the acquisition of Kim, plays second base, and putting Cronenworth in kind of that super utility, call it a Chris Taylor-like Dodger role, where, you'll find a spot start for him or always have his bat in the lineup. That puts Cronenworth as the one out of the 5 guys right off the bench. And then you got Caratini, right, our backup catcher. So 2 out of your 5 are locked. So you're down to 3 spots. I think Mateo gives you a ton of versatility and speed, especially if you're going to continue with the base runner rule at second base and extra innings. Once baseball figures out what they're going to do. And then, as you said, we have the O'Grady kid who, we got him from Tampa, and, the lightning in the bottle is that he turns into a similar guy like Cronenworth, maybe a kid who brings a good stick here, right? But again, we don't know. And then there's a guy like Onya, big bat, kind of reminds me of a slightly smaller version of a Franmil Reyes, big bat, but a little limited maybe on the defense, right? The big factor, again, we don't know this answer, is the designated hitter. As fans, we love it. Baseball keeps waffling back and forth, and it's part of the negotiations, right? So as fans, we're going to have to wait and see. And let's be honest, it doesn't bode well for baseball teams and free agents, right? Because, it's limiting players to 15 teams instead of 30. Going into Profar, I would love to re-sign Profar. Every championship team has a good dose of veterans off the bench. There's a connection there from last year, a big part of what the team, the special season we had. And again, another connection with Preller there. So it's going to come down to him playing a little bit more of a limited role with the Padres. Again, the DH is a big deal. Or going to Kansas City for maybe a little more money and some playing time. So, I'm sure there's an offer on the table anywhere from $5 to $6 million. So we'll see, man. But I like how the bench is coming along. I think there is a piece or two we'll be adding to that.
Yeah, I think George, and before I go over to Nick, I just want to mention, I think it's like Kim to me is a guy that I see platooning maybe with Cronenworth. I feel like Cronenworth's going to play potentially in different places, and maybe Kim does as well. But Kim's a guy who is going to have a transition window where he's coming over to the major leagues, and he's going to be needing to make some adjustments. And so I think that's an interesting thing we have to think about, that he may take, it's a 4-year contract. So this may take him some time to make those adjustments. But I do think that there's an opportunity to platoon Cronenworth and Kim. I like Mateo. I think he needs to focus on, his hitting. He needs to improve from a hitting standpoint, which would really help the club. Mitch Moreland's a guy that we had that, they didn't bring back, but but potentially if the DH just gets settled, maybe that's a guy that comes in late. One thing that guys we talked about offline real quick before was, Prellers likes those veterans who've been in a World Series situation before, right? And to me, that's a Moreland type player. I feel like maybe they don't need to bring a guy like that in until maybe the trade deadline. But as you kind of see where your team is at. But Nick, I'd love to get your thoughts on the bench, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about the Kim signing and what do you think how he'll contribute.
Yeah, the Kim signing, I think more than obviously outside of the Darvish and Snell, I think was one of the moves in MLB's offseason that has caught a lot of teams off guard. There's a lot of teams that need a shortstop. And I believe MLB Trade Rumors free agent predictions, he was rated, I believe, the 7th highest free agent available. So there's a lot of teams, the Angels, the Blue Jays, amongst others, that could have been going after a shortstop. And he ended up going to a team with probably the best shortstop in Major League Baseball. So I don't think a lot of people saw that happening. And it shows you the depth that they're going after.
Well, Nick, I'll stop you there real quick. Is the Padres now would have, adding Kim, that's 4 shortstops in the infield. We're talking Machado, Tatis, Cronenworth, and Kim. I mean, that's 4. That's incredible to have that many shortstops. I mean, like, if you're another team, maybe you're like, can we have one? It's pretty incredible. I'll go back to you. I just wanted to mention like that's pretty awesome to have that kind of depth.
If there is a DH in play in 2021, there could be days where Eric Hosmer is given the day off at first, and you will see 4 shortstops playing the infield. That very likely could happen. I believe in one of Dennis Lynn's articles recently, one of the biggest surprises during the 2020 season that he heard from scouts were how since when did this shortstop Jay Cronenworth show 80 grade defense at first base? It was something that was just, he looks like a Gold Glove caliber defender at first base all of a sudden, like he's been playing it his entire life. So a guy like him is incredibly valuable because he could play anywhere on the infield. Supposedly he's going to find some time in the outfield during camp to get him comfortable out there. He might be somebody who does get 400 to 500 at bats by playing 6, 7, 8 different positions. That could happen. Hyun-Sung Kim, I see primarily being the second baseman, just because it's one less thing to help make the transition more comfortable. And Jake already in his rookie year with us showed the ability to play second, play first, play short. So it really is just building off of what he already did successfully last year.
Well, Nick, I remember, I think it was last year at some point, maybe early on in the season, maybe back in July, being that the season started at July, you wrote an article about the Swiss Army knife, and I think that holds true for Cronenworth this year. So yeah, we're excited to continue that. FriarLounge will be active, of course, the 3 of us active on Twitter this year. In addition, we'll be continue to doing podcasts and writing articles, and have some special featured writers this year they'll be adding to the site. So if you are interested in writing for the FriarLounge, do feel free to reach out to us on either Twitter or directly friarlounge@gmail.com, and happy to have those conversations. But gentlemen, let's just end this by talking a little bit about 2021. Maybe you can kick around some predictions or just any thoughts here. Obviously it's early, right? We're in January. We're excited. Baseball's hopefully around the corner. We could talk a little bit about when we think this season might start, and any initial thoughts for how the season's going to play out. George, I'll kick it over to you. Just your general thoughts here.
Yeah, just what I've heard is that the owners want to kick it off a month after. So I'm hearing Memorial Day weekend, kind of right around there is when the season will start, which according to that cuts out about possibly, definitely 30 to up to maybe 45, 60 games. So we'll see if we hit a 100-game season, 110-game season, maybe with double headers. Here's a hoping. And then, more importantly, some levels of fans in the stands. Depending on what the comfort level is, of course, what the COVID numbers, what the vaccine situation looks like. So, but the bottom line is 2021's here, and Padre baseball is for the better. So super stoked for the season to get underway. And as you guys know, we love going out to Peoria. We'll see what that kind of scene looks like here. Hopefully there's some more clarity over that. But yeah, man, hope to see you guys out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, love your final thoughts here.
Yeah, right now the 2021 season and the parameters and the details on it are TBD. There's just not enough information yet to really know what it's going to be. At this point last year, we had no idea COVID was going to have such an impact on day-to-day life, including the baseball season. So, you just got to take it as it is, and hopefully in the next 2 months, by the end of February, hopefully we have a lot more clarity as to what's going to happen and what we can do safely, and get back to normal, where we all love going out to the ballparks and seeing our favorite game being played.
Honestly, yeah, guys, I'd give anything to go to a baseball game and spring training game in March and just watch a baseball game. But doing it safe, doing it the right way is I think the way to go. And looking forward to doing that at some point in 2021. I'm grateful to get a chance to do this with you guys tonight. Look forward to doing more of these in 2021. Appreciate the time, gentlemen. I look forward to more of these as we get closer to the season. So thank you. Signing off, guys. Have a great night. Talk to you soon.